When we think of Africa's ancient history, one image stands above the rest. The golden mask of Tutankhamun, the towering pyramids of Giza, the grand temples of Luxor. The pharaohs of Egypt have captured the world's imagination for centuries. They are celebrated in textbooks, documentaries, and Hollywood films as the defining figures of Africa's past. But what if I told you that Egypt is just one thread in Africa's vast and intricate historical tapestry? That beyond the Nile, empires rose and fell, kings and queens ruled over vast lands, and civilizations thrived with knowledge, innovation, and power? Africa's history is not a single story. It is a grand epic, woven with threads of gold, iron, ivory, and ink. Today, we unravel that tapestry and rediscover the full legacy of Africa. The ancient Egyptians were remarkable, but they were not alone. Journey beyond the Nile, and you'll find the Kingdom of Kush, Egypt's southern neighbor, whose rulers were not only powerful, but at times, conquerors of Egypt itself. In the 8th century BCE, the Kushite king Paya led his army north and seized the throne of Egypt, ruling as the first pharaoh of the 25th dynasty. His dynasty left behind towering pyramids in Meroe, proving that pyramid building was not unique to Egypt. Further west, we find the Empire of Ghana, not the modern nation, but an empire so wealthy in gold that Arab traders called it the Land of Gold. By the 9th century, its capital, Kumbisale, was a thriving metropolis with grand stone buildings and a complex system of governance. The Ghanaian kings controlled trade routes that stretched from the Sahara to the Mediterranean, ensuring their empire's prosperity. From Ghana, power shifted to the Mali Empire, where the legendary Mansa Musa ascended the throne in the 14th century. He was not only the richest man in history, his wealth so immense it is said that he devalued gold in Egypt during his pilgrimage to Mecca, but also a patron of knowledge. The city of Timbuktu, under his rule, became a center of learning, home to the renowned Sankore University, where scholars studied astronomy, law, medicine, and philosophy. Eastward, in the highlands of Ethiopia, the Kingdom of Aksum thrived as one of the great trading empires of antiquity. By the 4th century CE, Aksum had its own script, minted its own coins, and engaged in trade with Rome, Persia, and India. The kingdom embraced Christianity long before much of Europe did, and its obelisks, some over 80 feet tall, stand as marvels of engineering. And then there is Great Zimbabwe, a civilization that defied expectations. In the heart of southern Africa, a city of stone walls, towers, and palaces stood as the political and economic center of a thriving empire. At its height between the 11th and 15th centuries, it controlled trade routes that connected Africa to the Indian Ocean world. And yet, for years, European historians refused to believe that Africans had built such a grand city, an erasure of history that we must correct. But these are only a few of the civilizations that thrived across the continent. The Kingdom of Benin, famous for its intricate bronze sculptures, the Swahili city-states, masters of maritime trade, the Hausa city-states, known for their skilled artisans and traders, the powerful Kingdom of Congo, with its structured government and diplomatic ties to Portugal. Africa's past is far more than pyramids. It is an interconnected web of cultures, economies, and innovations. For centuries, Africa's history has been told through a narrow lens. Egypt is often presented as an isolated jewel of civilization, while the rest of the continent is portrayed as a land of wilderness, devoid of complex societies. This is a deliberate distortion of history. Colonial narratives erased Africa's achievements, portraying the continent as one in need of civilization from the outside. The truth is that Africa's civilizations were thriving long before Europe's Renaissance. Think about this. The Moors of North Africa ruled Spain for centuries, bringing with them advancements in science, medicine, architecture, and philosophy. Their libraries in Córdoba and Granada housed thousands of manuscripts at a time when much of Europe was struggling to preserve knowledge. The Kingdom of Congo had a centralized government and diplomatic relations with European nations. Yet history books often reduce its people to victims of the transatlantic slave trade. The Swahili coast was a center of global trade, where African merchants exchanged goods with traders from China, India, and the Middle East. Yet this thriving maritime civilization is barely mentioned in world history courses. The idea that Africa was discovered by Europeans is absurd. Africa was already an active participant in global history, contributing to world trade, scholarship, and governance long before colonialism. And yet, even today, Africa's history is often presented as an afterthought. Textbooks dedicate pages to Greece and Rome, but barely a paragraph to the Mali Empire. Hollywood portrays Africa as a land of struggle, but rarely as a land of ancient wisdom and innovation. This needs to change. It is time to recognize Africa in its entirety, not just its hardships, not just its colonial past, but its full historical brilliance. Africa's story has been told for it, but now it is time for Africa to tell its own story. It is time to move beyond the same old narratives and uncover the true depths of Africa's past. So the next time someone speaks of Africa's history, ask them, have you heard of the Great Library of Timbuktu, where scholars from across the world gathered to study philosophy and science? Do you know about Great Zimbabwe, a city of stone built without mortar, its walls standing strong for centuries? Have you learned about Queen Nzinga, the warrior queen who resisted Portuguese colonization with unmatched strategy and diplomacy? The history of Africa is not a single chapter. It is a vast epic, rich with complexity, filled with stories waiting to be told. And this is only the beginning. There are more stories to uncover, more legacies to honor, more myths to dismantle. Because Africa is more than just pyramids. It is the birthplace of civilization, the cradle of humanity, the home of empires that shaped the world, and its story is far from over. If you believe in the power of knowledge and history, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us.